Welcome to part 2 of the Flying Focus 12th Busiversary. We're the nonprofit group that brings you the half-hour program called the Video Bus every week. And we make an effort to find out what's going on in town, to get the productions out on videotape, on cable access, and in your home and places that you may not even know a TV exists, worldwide, in town, nationwide. And one of the things we do is, with the help of volunteers, as Daniel is and does, get shows produced in the community about many different subjects. So what was the subject you were working on, Daniel?
This program was actually produced by Amnesty International, and it concerns the genocide that occurred in Guatemala, especially between the late 70s and early 80s, when hundreds of thousands of people were killed. And this documentary follows the travels of a woman who went back to the village where in 1982 her parents were killed along with hundreds of other people.
Principalmente yo soy sobreviviente de Río Negro y llamaron a 73 compañeros el 13 de febrero del 82 y allí mataron en la de Chococ. Y luego el 13 de marzo, cuando llegaron los militares y los patrulleros de autodefensa civil en Río Negro, mataron 70 mujeres y 107 niños.
Nothing has been done to provide a mental health program for survivors. There's been virtually no reparation for the relatives. There have been no investigations into the fate of the disappeared, especially the missing children. There are no government-sponsored exhumations of the mass graves. Despite numerous attacks, those exhumations that have taken place have been privately funded by people who are determined to pursue those responsible and to honor the victims.
We're going to talk to Barb now, and she's going to tell us about something lighter. Just trust me.
Yeah, the last clip, like many of our programs, is kind of sad. But this one coming up is Ira Schorr, who is with the Physicians for Social Responsibility, the national group, and he talks a bit about the problems with nuclear arms. And then he goes into a satire of a conservative politician, which is really hilarious. Let's take a look.
And you can trust him on that.
Have you got $1? Well, somebody give me $1, all right? I want to show you why it's good to starve government. Because you see, government is bad. Would you give me $1? Just reach into your pocket. You're from Britain, you got all this money. Give me a British $1. Thank you very much. You people are cheapskates. Yeah, it's a real $1. Thank you. Government is bad, okay? Government I work in government, and I'm trying to show you that government is bad. That's why I work in government, to prove how inefficient and corrupt it is. And I think I'm doing a darn good job. And that's because this is your money. Government should not have this money. This is your tax dollars. I want to return this money to you. Okay. Now, health care. I have a universal health care plan. It's a conservative universal health care plan. Any American who gets sick and doesn't have health care insurance, the federal government will be mandated to send them a get well card, cotton balls, Q-tips, and a map of Canada. Education? That's right. I pledge to you right now, I will seek extra money so that America can hire 7 additional teachers over the next 8 years. Now, the problem of inner city violence. As a conservative, I can tell you that I believe in prevention. People ask me, Senator Trussme, how are we going to prevent the 5-year-olds of today from becoming the violent teenagers of tomorrow? I say, we have to arrest those 5-year-olds now while they're still easy to catch. That's prevention. The environment. How many of you are concerned about the environment? My philosophy is simple. We've only got one environment, we must make sure we get the most for it. Now, President Bush is right to repeal the Clean Air Act. I mean, what good is clean air if you can't see it? You've got to see it to sell it, don't you? Pollution helps you see it. It's that simple.
This next program is about voluntary simplicity. It is told from the point of view of someone who's been involved in voluntary simplicity and the movement, if there is one, in Portland going back to the 80s. So let's take a look at that.
In fall of 1992, I took my first course through the Red Rose School, which is sponsoring tonight's talk. And the course was called Hands-on Economics for a Sustainable Future, which was taught by a guy named Eric Anderson, who I think is still here in the Portland community. And Eric Anderson is a permacultural designer, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the term permaculture, which relates really well to tonight's focus, the whole idea is that we are discovering in our industrial civilization that we are living in a civilization that is more destructive than it is constructive, and basically it cannot continue to go the way it is going very much longer in the future, or there will be a massive breakdown in ecosystems. And so the movement has developed where people want to try and create a culture that is permanent as opposed to a culture that is not permanent. And so that has given rise to the movement of permaculture. And so one of the early spokespeople for the movement for creating a permanent culture, a culture that is sustainable, was Bill Mollison. And so in the early 90s, when I was just beginning to understand what was going on with this sustainability thing, everybody was walking around carrying this book, Introduction to Permaculture by Bill Mollison. And this was sort of the Bible. You go to a meeting, you go to Community Connection, you go to some of these grassroots and environmental groups. I'll pass it along. Everybody was like either carrying Mollison's book or they were talking about Mollison.
We're going to talk about the No on Hate Forum that was conducted at the Mallory Church and edited by Barb. Do you remember what that was about?
Yeah, this was a forum of community members that was held after several young, drunk white men drove through Northeast Portland shooting at homes and cars of people that they thought belonged, or people that they thought were African American. Ironically enough, it turned out that at least half of the property that was shot belonged to white people. And they did catch these guys, which is good. And so there's various different people. There was a police officer and somebody from the FBI and a sociology professor from PSU who, and some other people on the panel who talk about hate crimes in general, and then people in the audience talk about things that have happened to them personally in Portland.
Over the years.
Over the years, and from the point of view of people who have been victims or family members of victims, and also people who were family members of people in the KKK, and things like that. So it's very interesting.
32 years ago, when I was a junior at the university, I had an older brother who was at Oregon State. He was in a phone booth where Nike is today. And somebody decided, a white man from Vancouver, he had a conflict with a black person. He decided he was going to shoot some black person. It just so happened to be my eldest brother. The thing that was most eerie to me was that it was almost the exact same rationale I heard from these individuals. I'm not a person who weeps outside, but I weep inside. And I think, as you know, when people weep inside, they normally gain weight. And so you can see that I'm probably about 100 pounds more than I was when I was the guy who sweetened or charmed my wife into marrying me, and she still haven't given up on me. But I'm saying these things, I'm kind of laughing at this thing, but inside I'm really crying. Because most of us don't understand how stress over an extended period of time affects us.
Because I was raised with within the KKK, organized crime, who held very high positions in this state, and were part of illegal, bootlegging and cover-ups things, and I understand how the process works, and I understand how the silence works, and I understand how the intimidation works. When I was 8 years old, I walked down my backyard and found a dead black man. It was never spoken about. And this just can't go on.
Different section in the catalog now. This is the civil rights section. Has to do with our coverage of Carl Upchurch,
Prexy Nesbitt.
Prexy Nesbitt, John Lewis, and the Kendra James ongoing debacle. You want to talk about those tapes, Henny?
Well, the first one is John Lewis, when he came out here just before the bombing started in Iraq, and he spoke at the Peace March, but in this program he was speaking at a church prior to the Peace March. And I'm embarrassed to say that before this program I did not know who John Lewis was, but I was extremely impressed by his talk. Very passionate speaker, very intelligent, and after listening to this, I thought, this guy, he's the one who should be president.
I would encourage young people, and those of us not so young, to read the literature of the movement. There's some wonderful books. Dave Haberstein's book, The Children, about what we did in Nashville. To watch Eyes on the Prize. It's a whole mindset. Some people think that nonviolence is not just don't strike back, don't hit. But it's more than that. It's a way of life. It's a way of living. It's an attitude. And, you know, words can be as violent as a blow. Body language can be very violent. See, we just didn't go out one day and start sitting in. We didn't get up one morning and say we're going on a freedom ride, or we're going to march from Selma to Montgomery. But we went through a period of training. Almost an entire school year, a group of young people became immersed in the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. And so we have to change our attitude. I think we should start teaching our children, even before they come into the world, the way of love, the way of nonviolence. And I think maybe in the Congress we should have maybe we should establish a Department of Peace. And you know, it may sound strange for politicians or elected officials to talk about love, but we need to tell it's better to love than to hate. Hate is too heavy a burden to bear. And why teaching the whole society, the whole region of the world to hate? We hate them, they hate us, we kill them before they kill us. What is this all about? It's foolishness, it's madness. We have to stop it. Someplace along the way, a great nation and a proud people should be able to say, we're going to lay down the tools and instrument of war and study war no more.
My name is Harry Schaich, and I moved here from New Jersey in 1962. I had three reasons. One, I needed a job. Two, Packy the elephant had just been born at the zoo, and my boss-to-be took me there. And three, Wayne Morse was one of your senators, and he was opposing our involvement in Vietnam. Then, after I'd been here a while, I went on a peace march and saw this booth for Flying Focus, and I went over there, and this very pleasant lady said, would you like to join? And I was interested in film and also activism, and so I did.
That's great. Now, did you do any projects after you started with Flying Focus?
Yes, I took a class in editing and then edited the Carl Upchurch talk. And I had first heard about Carl Upchurch on NPR radio, and I was extremely moved as he described his rising above a criminal life to explain and change the conditions that create ghetto crime. He came to Portland and gave this talk shortly before his untimely death in May 2003.
It was in the penitentiary or whether it was out, I used to like to fight and knock people down and stand up and gloat and do that kind of stuff. Well, I did that for the last time in Lewisburg, and they put me in a segregation unit, kept me in 1 year. Let me tell you what this experience was. This was a segregation unit that had nothing in it. It didn't have a toilet and none of that kind of stuff. I started behaving better and they moved me out of the cell. The first thing I noticed when I was in the other cell was whoever was in there before me had a table. Under the table, he put a book. The title of that book was called The Yale Shakespearean. I had never heard of Shakespeare. I didn't know that some people referred to him as the greatest English-speaking writer in the world. I didn't know anything about that. The thing I was satisfied with, however, is that I turned to a sonnet and I can play with it every day as a distraction. And the sonnet that, because I didn't have any discerning powers, I had no discriminating taste for this fellow, I just read what was open. And this sonnet was what kind of shook things up a little bit. Sonnet number 29 by William Shakespeare, 14 lines from a guy that I hardly knew. It was about 8 or 9 words I still didn't know that I was going to look up. But when in disgrace, the fortunate man's eyes was powerful enough to have me read it over and over and over and over again. The power of the poem and that sonnet continues to even, long after I initially read it, continue to wash over me. So much so that was April 1977. Not only have I been back in the penitentiary, but it kind of was the ticket for me to go out and see, can I get a GED and a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. I'm working trying to get a PhD. That was his impetus.
I'm Dan Handelman with Flying Focus, and I worked on a couple of civil rights shows this year. The first one was Prexy Nesbitt, a labor organizer from the Chicago area who was in town talking about building a multi-ethnic peace movement. And this tape was videotaped by Will Seaman from the East Timor Action Network and Portland Peaceful Response Coalition, and he's done some work with KBOO. He's an all-around good guy, and Prexy Nesbitt has been around the world and has incredible skill in trying to bring the ideas of how the mostly white peace movement can make themselves a little bit more available to people of color in order to make the peace movement more multi-ethnic.
There is a need, it seems to me, and this is one challenge to the traditional view of the white peace movement, for the white peace movement to what I call consciously take up on a principled anti-racist basis, an anti-racist perspective and practice in all the work that they do around peace. Not as a sidebar, not as a sidebar, but as one of the major strands in the main text that you're working on. It's not an afterthought. Well, let's see if we can get over to talk to these black churches over there, or make some relationships with that black church, or make some relationships with this predominantly black community organization here, or that particular high school over there. It's how do we regularly form relationships with those organizations, institutions, and people, so that when we say we're struggling tonight, we need you to be there, there will be a response. How do we regularly be there for them in the struggles that they are waging, be they around racist police attacks, be they around unemployment issues, be they around dealing with dope and dope dealing issues in their neighborhood, be it around whatever of the struggles that are being waged regularly that mean for many communities of color there is an ongoing state of war that they live on. Unlike what most of our white colleagues and comrades face in their situations, we've got to have a bringing together of those practices so that there is a relationship.
So the next show that you're going to see clips from is called The Community and the Portland Police 2003. And basically it's 4 short segments about different police accountability issues. The first one's about the Police Review Board here in Portland, where 5 out of the 9 members all quit in frustration. The next part is about why they quit, including some of the cases that they heard that didn't go very well. And the third section is about a shooting and deaths in custody report that was released about the Portland Police Bureau that wasn't very favorable about how they handle those cases. And the last section you helped me with, PC, was about Kendra James.
It was both the forum, the report back to the community by the police as to why they thought it was necessary that she die at their hands, and the next part was the rally, which is the community's response to the police about this is too many deaths, let's not have it happen again.
Right, and then there was a forum that the community put on themselves about their investigation into that, and Martin Evans, who you saw in part one of this show, videotaped that. So let's take a look at that clip.
Once again, stop the murders! Stop the murders! Right now!
I will now attempt to focus upon the shooting, our findings, and the discrepancies. While we are not professionals or experts in any of the disciplines which are essential in dealing with criminal or civil actions, we are quite versed in common sense.
I can't predict. I can't tell them this is an okay one to, oh, this one you need to go to, but this one you can't.
They weren't, Vanilla wasn't on their radar screen.
You know what? Well, I'm not going there. Yeah, I'm not going there.
There were tactics taken by officers that unnecessarily exposed them to risk. And this jeopardized their safety, and it also has the concomitant effect of increasing the chances that officers will be in situations where they justifiably perceive the need to shoot.
I will continue to work toward a citizen-based, open, vigorous body that can actually hold police accountable. I resign from the Citizen Review Committee.
I can no longer take part in this sham called the CRC.
I resign from the Citizen Review Committee.
I resign from the Citizens Review Committee effective the close of this CRC meeting.
For the above reasons and others, I resign.
I'm resigning because this resignation was requested of me.
You think about what unifies us. Not what separates us, but what unifies us. We were all in this room together today, lots of different kinds of people across age, across sexual orientation, across religious beliefs, across any kind of difference you can imagine. But we were here, and we were unified.
My last clip is about the stewardship of the earth. It's a speech that was given by Julia Butterfly Hill, a woman who sat in a tree, a redwood tree, to keep it from being cut down for 2 years, and she became world famous, and she was at an event called the World Fest in Los Angeles area, and I was down there on a vacation and happened to catch her talk. So we are glad to bring you a little bit of Julia Butterfly Hill.
The first thing we can do is look into our lives, and anything that has the word waste, disposable, or trash on it, get it out of our lives. Because we live in a disposable consciousness now. But when I came down from Luna is when I first started realizing it. I didn't realize it before I went in the tree. I used to go and get coffee 2 times a day in a paper cup with a plastic lid, and I got non-fair trade, non-organic, non-shade-grown coffee. I was the ultimate bad poster child of non-PC before I went into the tree. But I came down, and when I saw a paper cup, I saw a forest, and it hurt me. When I saw the plastic lid, I see the threat to Anwar in Alaska. I see the indigenous people I was just working with in Ecuador, and the indigenous people of Colombia, where there's a group tabling here about that today. And so I started thinking about it, and I started asking friends of mine that are indigenous peoples from all over the world if they had any words for waste, disposable, or trash, and there are none. I was just kicked out of Ecuador by the president of Ecuador, and I was really honored. And I was there working in solidarity with indigenous people that asked me to come. And I was most brutalized in the entire experience by the military police. The military police, 88% of their funding approximately in Ecuador comes from the United States war on drugs. And you know what they're doing with it? They're protecting the oil pipeline, the biggest addiction our world has ever had. It's not a war on drugs, it's a war for drugs, for the drug of oil. So there's tables out there working on it, but your voice counts. And if you think your voice doesn't count, let me remind you, it didn't take 738 days for me to protect that tree in the grove I was in. It took 738 days to build the critical mass necessary to protect that tree in the grove I was in. I was a part of a team that grew and grew and grew. Every letter, every phone call, every fax, every email, every protest, every rally, everything was a part of that.
Well, thank you for watching Flying Focus's 12th Busiversary. We're glad that you're there looking at us. And if you do want to get involved and you want to become part of Flying Focus, doing all the wonderful work we do, I've been involved almost from the beginning. The numbers you can call are 503-239-7456 or 321, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
5051.
That's the part I forget.
And to end, I have to tell you something very sad. We lost one of our only four-legged Flying Focus member this year. She, Mischief, alias Peace Dog, had been in very many actions, and I think one of the ones that she was in that she didn't have a shirt on was an anti-racist rally, and people said, "Where's Mischief's T-shirt, Peace Dog's T-shirt?" I said, "Well, she's showing her true colors." Anyway, we're going to end with a memorial to her and for the work she did for Flying Focus. This is for Mischief, who passed on in May at 17.5 years old. How could anyone ever tell you that you're anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you that you're less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. Peace Dog.